Welcome. So today I have a question here from Linda. Linda said, my thoughts won't stop. I have been meditating for over a year, and no matter what I do, I can't shut my thoughts off. I found you a month ago hoping, but it's like a war in my mind. So I actually questioned her. I did a follow-up question. I just wanted to gauge what her practice was and how often she practiced. So I asked her, Linda, what does your practice look like? What do you do and how often? And I asked this because more often than not, when people ask me and they're really struggling with incessant and compulsive thought activity, suffering their thoughts, I find that they don't have a meditation practice established. Or if they are practicing, they're not doing it correctly, or they're just getting in their own way by creating unnecessary complexity in their practice. So that is why I wanted to ask Linda this first and foremost. So Linda replied to me and said, I practice 1 hour in the morning, sometimes 2, and before bed at least an hour. Does the mind ever silence, or do we just continue to turn them away? Is this normal? Because I am confused between complete silence of nothingness to thoughts popping up constantly. So you see, with someone like Linda, if she's practicing 2 to 3 hours per day of meditation, this shouldn't be a problem. So it can be a couple of things. If you are, first of all, if you don't have any meditation practice established, what you will naturally experience is compulsive thinking, meaning the mind will just continue to arise regardless of if you want to think or not. The mind will just constantly be spitting out labels and judgments and descriptions, and it's going to be really tiring and it's going to exhaust you. It may have become the norm for you, but we don't even realize that like how much energy it takes on a moment by moment basis to constantly be describing our experience. That is why we call it compulsive thinking, okay? So for that, the first thing I will always tell anybody is that they have to establish a period of time during their day where they sit down, withdraw from the senses, and they practice the simple meditation technique that we talk about on this channel. We'll get into exactly what that entails a little later. But without that sit-down practice, you can forget about being present during the day. You can forget about all these other spiritual principles that we talk about, because in a compulsive, distracted state of mind, all of this will only remain conceptual, and we will never really experience these teachings. We need to brew in silence. We need to learn to experience without constantly describing and judging compulsively happening. Okay? So first and foremost, the sit-down practice is absolutely crucial. Well, now in someone like Linda's case, Linda practices a few hours per day, which is a lot, because even when you do establish a meditation practice, I usually don't recommend more than 30 minutes twice per day. You can, of course, feel free to do more if you wish and you feel called to it, but you don't need to constantly just sit with your eyes closed. Meditation and practice is not just something that happens on the couch, although that is the foundation of it. Your sit-down practice is the foundation of your spiritual practice. But meditation is something that must become sort of the entire time thing, like even in the midst of conversation, in the midst of experiencing, you must start to discover the changeless reality, which is the space of being in which all experience is arising. Okay? So in someone's like Linda's case, there can be a couple of things. Firstly, it can be that she's sitting down for meditation, but she's not necessarily intently practicing. So one of the simplest meditations that I prescribe to everybody, especially if they're just joining, is awareness of sensation. Learning to become aware of the sensation of your hands. Please do so now while you're with me here on the video. Become aware of the sensation of your hands. Just feel your hands. Notice that when you're paying attention, right? Not thinking about your hands or describing your hands or creating an image in your mind about your hands, just actually paying attention to the sensation of your hands being there. When you're feeling your hands being there, in that moment, there's no thought. When your attention is focused, there's no thought. So you see, when you sit down to practice this, you have to, again and again, bring attention plainly back to the sensation of hands. Now, what can happen sometimes is that you sit down for meditation and you're being lazy and you don't actually practice, but instead you're sitting and just thinking. And of course, it's difficult, but we have to create a certain intensity. We have to be a little extreme about it. During those moments when you sit down for practice, nothing else matters in your life. You as a person do not matter. What you have coming up later does not matter. Your personal life and your goals and wishes and dreams and hopes do not matter in those moments of practice. The only thing that matters is your intensity with which you practice. Just bringing your attention back from thinking to the bare sensation of hands. And you can incorporate the breath in it as well if you wish, just watching the breath, watching the sensation, watching the breath, watching the sensation. Because we need to get good at observing without compulsive thought, observing without judgment, observing without description, okay? Now that could be one thing, that the practice is lazy. We're sitting down for meditation, but we're not actually practicing. We're just sitting and thinking. Even sitting with your eyes closed will be of some help because at least you're not engaging in constant stimulation. However, it will not really help you that much. So that's one thing. Now, the next thing it could be that Linda is trying to practice. However, she is too interested in the content of her thoughts. If the thoughts are not stopping, it means there's something supplying the thoughts with interest, energy, attention, devotion. Your attention will remain hooked to thoughts because you are too interested in what they're saying. Why are you too interested in what they're saying? Because it's happening. It appears to be your voice speaking. It appears to be your voice speaking about your life and the things that you hold so important. So you see why in my previous point I shared with you that in moments of practice, you as a person and your life and everything you care about does not matter. This is maybe an extreme thing to say, but you have to see the necessity of it. In meditation, you are, for those moments, letting go of the person that you are. You are becoming empty of your entire fullness, your pride, your ego, okay? And you are that is the only way to understand yourself at a deeper, subtler level. That is the only way to go from the surface level of thought to a much deeper truth of who you are, of what all of this is. So if you sit down and you even have an intensity of practice and you are doing your best to bring attention back to sensation or breath, but if you are too interested in your thought, if you are not letting go of your concern in that moment, you're not letting go of interest in the content of thinking, then of course thoughts will just keep happening. Because you see, the moment you are interested in a thought that arises, whatever it says, it could be talking about the spiritual practice, or it could be talking about what you're going to have for dinner later. If you express any interest and you pursue it, automatically it sparks the flow of thoughts to come, and your attention remains hooked in thoughts. So when the thought arises and you actually, in the moment of its arising, and you acknowledge maybe you're thinking, in that moment you let it go. You just, in the moment, you do not care about what it's saying. You have no interest in what it says or what it could mean for your future. Just none of that matters. So you just sort of drop it. And there's no technique to do this. It's just an acknowledgement and no longer needing to pursue it, just letting it go, just dropping it. And just simply returning to the practice of bringing the attention back to the breath, to the sensation. In that, you will find that thoughts will not compulsively keep happening. Once again, you may find your attention back in thought because right now it's still habitual. But you see, if you're not supplying thoughts with the interest that they need, because that's like their fuel, their life force, then thoughts cannot keep profusely happening. You may have to practice this for a few weeks and few months, depending on how compulsive the state of mind currently is, before you really experience tangible results. But I can confidently share with you, it took me a few months as well, but I can confidently share with you, if you just stay consistent with this and you really apply this teaching, the compulsiveness of mind will drop away because it's no longer being supplied the fuel that it needs in order to survive, which is your interest, your resistance. So that is certainly another thing. Too much interest in thought. If you let go of the interest, thoughts will automatically drop away. Now, to Linda's last point, she said, does the mind ever silence, or do we just continue to turn away from it? Well, Linda, the whole point of meditation is not just to silence the mind forever, because the mind is performing its function, which is describing, labeling, right? It is the realm of descriptions, of language, of compartments, of meaning, okay? It's doing its job, but right now the problem is it's compulsively just going about. And it has come into a greater significance than it is meant to be of, It has become the master where it's supposed to be your servant. So the job of meditation is not to totally silence the mind. In the beginning and in the moments of practice, we have to turn away from the mind completely and silence it, because right now we have no idea of a subtler understanding of ourselves. We have no experience of that which is prior to thinking. So we have to sort of stop the noise in order to acknowledge the silence. Okay? But notice that even when the noise arises, it is accompanied by the background of silence. Think about that for a moment. Even when the noise arises, silence is always here. It may recede into the background, you can say it that way, but silence is always here, just like space is always here. You can fill it with objects, but the space is not going anywhere. Space is space. Just like that, the purpose of meditation is not to just render the mind silent forever and no thinking, no more. It is to recognize that in which thoughts appear and disappear, the emptiness out of which thoughts arise and into which they subside. It is to discover that which is always, changelessly, motionlessly here. That which you here and now feel as your sense of being, your presence, which is always there with or without thoughts. This realm or reality or space, whatever you want to refer to it as, you begin to discover more and more effortlessly through your practice. And the more you discover yourself as this space, you will no longer be bothered by thought. For right now, what is bothered by thought is also just thought. Mind creates the battle, it fights the battle, it suffers the battle, and then it says, I want to be free of the battle. You are only the presence in which this entire suffering, this battling, appears and disappears. That is the purpose of this practice and what it helps you realize. So I hope this was helpful. Put this into practice. If you the practice that we spoke of today, if you want to learn it deeper, I have a free support group right now which has a free mini course exactly on this, how to start this practice and go deeper into it and overcome the obstacles that you're likely to encounter. I also have 2 other free mini courses attached to my support group regarding emotional mastery and self-inquiry, which are your next steps if this practice is new to you. So I'll link that down below. Join my free support group, and over there you can also submit questions just like Linda, and I will choose a few every single week to make videos on. So that resource is available to you. Go ahead and check it out. That's it for this video. Make sure to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to this channel for more videos. I'll see you next time.